So a couple of comments, first of all, about the retreat generally, and then we're going to move on to Vedana today, the satipatthana, and how we can apply that with awareness of others in the Lojong system. But first of all, it's possible that resistance is showing up for some of us because there's a lot happening in our lives, maybe. I was talking to someone yesterday who had the phrase pandemic resistance, which I thought was good, actually, that, you know, you just are sick of it. It's been going on so long, and there's some part of us that's wanting it to be different. Yeah, I mean, it's totally understandable, but of course it's futile because it is the way it is. But if you've got resistance arising, then meet that with the same attitude of open-heartedness, turn towards it. This is the way things are right now, and resisting the resistance is definitely not a good idea, because that will just lead to more resistance. So how can we welcome it in? It's unpleasant, but we turn towards it and we use it as an opportunity for transforming the mind. We're also moving into day 3 of the retreat, and there's a famous kind of day 3 syndrome that can happen on retreats, which is where people just feel a bit kind of more gritty on day 3. I think there can be a few reasons for this. One is we've arrived a bit more fully. I mean, maybe this is going to be less so an at-home retreat, but if one goes away and you rush to get there, and then you just sort of zonked out and exhausted the first couple of days, and in day 3, stuff is starting to bubble up. So if you have a day 3 scratchiness, that's also very normal. And again, something to turn towards, welcome, examine, be good-humoured and kind around. Now, I don't want to be planting the seeds of, oh, maybe I'm having a day 3, because I generally don't have a day 3, to be honest. I think I do my sort of crashing out on day 1 and day 2, so I'm often feeling a bit better by day 3. So I'm just saying, really the point I'm making is, if you are feeling a bit resistant and gritty, that's human, that's normal, and we just bring that onto the path. And it might mean that you just need to be a bit more gentle with yourself today. Or you may be feeling really joyful and excited and in love with the Dharma, in love with the snow, and that's also wonderful, and you just enjoy that with open hands. You don't hold on to it, but you enjoy that with open hands and an open heart. Another thing that may be happening is reality may be biting. And there's a lovely phrase from T.S. Eliot: humankind cannot bear. Other thing that happens on retreats, I think sometimes we're really sincere in our practice, and we're turning towards our experience, we're opening up to reality. And of course, reality means surrendering our addiction to ego, this illusion of a fixed and unchanging self that's mine, and gives us a sense of security. Yeah, we're unwinding that on this retreat, as we do on many retreats. And of course, there's a kickback sometimes. And so if you're noticing grasping for distractions, that's also very normal. It could just be, it's all got a bit much, in which case just release back. What can you enjoy today? If it's snowy, enjoy the snow. Yeah. So, and again, if you're grasping for distraction, you turn towards that. How interesting. What can I learn from that? Rather than thinking, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm distracted, I'm a useless practitioner. You're human. And the turning towards distraction is the practice. That is the practice, to breathe that in, notice it, and then breathe out. Acceptance, kindliness towards yourself and your fickle human mind. Okay, so having said those little introductory comments, I'm going to share some slides again today, just to give us a bit of structure. So as always, the first half of the morning, we're going to look at Vedana from a satipatthana point of view. Oops, didn't want that to happen. And then we're going to move on to the Lojong. So the way the text goes, it's very simple. How does she, in regard to feelings, abide, contemplating feelings? Here, when feeling a pleasant feeling, she knows, I feel a pleasant feeling. When an unpleasant feeling, she knows, I feel an unpleasant feeling. When feeling a neutral feeling, she knows, I feel a neutral feeling. Yeah, very, very simple. And feeling here is a very specific meaning. And as I think I said at the beginning, Vedana, it's a very difficult word to translate. Some words I just prefer calling it Vedana. It's feeling as in feeling tone. So it's not feeling as in an emotion. So feeling as in an emotion, you know, I feel angry. That's more the domain of chitta that we're going to come on to tomorrow. So this is feeling as in the initial, very, very initial arising of beginning to, oh, this is pleasant. Oh, this is unpleasant. This is boring and dull. So, and as we'll know from our study of the Nidana chain, this is an absolutely crucial point of awareness, because if we can catch the Vedana as it arises, we have this extraordinary choice point, which Bhante calls the gap. And the choice point is we don't have to tip automatically into pleasant, the unpleasant, and getting confused about the neutral, or being ignorant. And interesting, the word ignorant means to ignore, or being to ignore is part of that, the root of that word. And so there'll be lots of things in our experience that we just find a bit dull and we're ignoring them, but that will also have consequences. So as you'll know from your study in the Nidana chain, we have certain stages of our human experience that we can't do anything about in this moment. It's what's called a karma resultant. And this is having a body, having the six senses, and having the six senses that come into contact with the world. So here I am, I've got my body, I've got my eyes, I'm looking at you, all that's happening. Can't do anything about that. And then we have this very, very initial arising, which is also a resultant. So I look at you and I have this arising of pleasant Vedana. So we can't do anything about Vedana, but we can do something about how we respond to our Vedana. And that's why it's this absolutely crucial point of awareness. It can't be overstated enough. I think mindfulness of Vedana is hugely, hugely important, because usually it's just flying by and we find ourselves in reactive states, and then we're, dealing with the reaction. But if we can be much more subtly aware of Vedana as it arises in the body, then we become more and more skilled and more agile at preventing the arising of reactive states. Now, of course, life is just this massive torrent of stuff pouring through. So it isn't like you're going along and you think, here I am, I've got a body, I've senses, I'm coming into contact. Oh, here's a Vedana. Oh, I can make a choice. Because life is just pouring through in the moments. But it's more, the way I talk about it is we're getting a little wedge of awareness in that torrent. Comes a space and it becomes an opportunity for choice. So choice point, I think, is a very good way of describing awareness of Vedana. So we're going to do an exercise in a moment to practice noticing, feeling, experiencing the Vedana that is present. So we're waking up to our moment by moment embodied experience, because Vedana is very closely related to sensation, of course, in the body. And if we've got mental states, it can be very interesting to think, well, where are they echoing in my body? So say you got anxiety come into the body and in my stomach. In this moment, the anxieties from a previous moment and this moment, I've got tension in my stomach, I can release around that. So sometimes working just on the mental end of it can be much more complicated, but coming into the body all the time. What are my sensations doing? And catching this initial arising of the feeling tone is very interesting. And then there's the refrain, this chorus that I mentioned the other, that repeats through the whole sutta. And this gives us the perspective of wisdom to bring to our Vedana contemplation. In this way, in regard to feelings, she abides contemplating feelings internally, externally, and externally. So you're aware of Vedana in yourself, and you're aware that other people also have Vedana. And in the second half of the morning, we're going to go into that much more specifically from the Lojong point of view. She abides contemplating the nature of arising, of passing away, of both arising and passing away in feelings. So we're aware of the impermanent nature, the fluid, transitory nature of feelings, of Vedana, this feeling tone. Mindfulness that there is feeling is established in her to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and continuous mindfulness. So this is the purpose of our awareness. We want to be bare knowledge. We know what's happening. We want to be continually mindful so we can abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. This is how, in regard to feelings, she abides contemplating feelings. So put very, very simply, it's going back to what I talked about the other day of moving from these tight, contracted, reactive states to just let life pour through the moments. So we rest in a broad, open, receptive awareness. We're aware of the arising and passing of this hedonic tone, this feeling tone. This is pleasant, this is unpleasant. Oh yeah, this was neutral, but actually when I go there, it's got a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of unpleasant. And we're very awake to all that, which guards the mind from tipping and falling headfirst into reactivity. Very liberating, beautiful practice. So what we're going to do now is some practice to investigate this together. We're going to do this in a very specific way. We're going to do it out loud in threes. And I'm very sorry, Taraloka team, I've completely forgotten to warn you that I'd like random breakout groups of 3 in just a moment, but these can just be random, so it should be quick. And I'm wondering, Bodhichitta, if you could demonstrate this with me, because you'll know this exercise. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. So maybe we'll just demonstrate it first and then I'll explain the technicality of it. So I'm going to, for a few moments, I'm going to name unpleasant Vedana that's present. And then Bodhichitta is going to name unpleasant Vedana that's present. We won't do it for a whole minute. We'll just do it for a little while just to demonstrate Bodhichitta. And then I'm going to name pleasant. And then Bodhichitta will name pleasant. And then I'm going to name neutral. And neutral is parts of the body that seem very uninteresting. And if you go there, waking up your awareness to that part of the body. And as I said, if your main experience is more mental or emotional, see where that's echoing in the body and name that. Okay. So I'll go first. Pain in lower back, unpleasant. Cold hands, unpleasant. Slight tension at base of skull, unpleasant. Slight anxiety in my stomach, unpleasant. Sort of fluttery sensations, unpleasant. Okay, over to you, Bodhichitta.
Slightly swollen belly, unpleasant. Tightness in my neck, unpleasant. Dry mouth, unpleasant.
Okay. So now I'm going to name pleasant vedana. Soft eyelids, pleasant. Warm shoulders, pleasant. Breathing in my back, pleasant. Lips touching, pleasant. Okay, over to you, Amalachita.
A smile, pleasant. Warm hands, pleasant. Weight coming down to my sitting bones, pleasant. Warm arms, pleasant.
Okay. And now I'll name the neutral, what I would describe as neutral. Elbows, neutral. Sensations in earlobes, neutral. Sensations, tongue, neutral. Scalp, neutral. Okay, over to you, Amalachita.
Face, neutral. Middle of my back, neutral. Lower legs, neutral.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Amalachita. Yeah. Okay, so you're going to have a go at doing that in groups of 3. And you're going to have to obviously self-manage, as it were. So when you get into a group of 3, give yourself a number, 1, 2, 3. So someone's number 1, someone's number 2, someone's number 3. Appoint someone as a timekeeper in your group and do all this, just sort of promptly. And then the first round, person 1 will have 1 minute to name anything unpleasant. And you don't have to come up with loads of things. You might have a lot of things, you might have a few things, but the main thing is you're learning how to really attend to this arising of unpleasant sensation. And then number 2 will have a minute for unpleasant, and number 3 will have a minute for unpleasant. Then number 1 will have a minute for pleasant, number 2 will have a minute for pleasant, number 3 will have a minute for pleasant, and then number 1 will have a minute for neutral, number 2 will have a minute for neutral, number 3 will have a minute for neutral. Okay, so that will take about 9 minutes. So I think what we'll do is have the breakout rooms for about 12 minutes, which gives you a bit of wriggle room. And what I'll do is in the chat box, I'll remind you of those stages and just see how you get on. And when someone's speaking, the other two's job is simply to be a witness. You don't make any comment. But it can also be very interesting to notice what's happening for you when other people are sharing their experience. Just notice that. I'm not going to tell you what may or may not happen, but be curious about that. And if you could, when you do the breakout rooms, if you could leave me out of the rooms, please, tech people. And I really hope that I'm not causing you too much adversity on the path, asking you to suddenly do breakout rooms. Good. Let me just quickly write in the chat box while the rooms are being sorted out, and I hope you find it interesting, everybody. Oops. Oh. Okay, so let's hear from a few people what you noticed doing that, what your experience was doing that. So again, we can use the putting your hand up option. And remember, it's the one, if you click on the reactions, it's at the bottom where it says raise hand. So it's not the other icons. So Lisa, yeah, what did you notice?
Hi. My first sort of thought was when other people were talking, I then started to notice those areas myself. So some of the new things that I hadn't thought about when I was doing it myself, suddenly it was like, oh, is that pleasant in me? Is it neutral, unpleasant? But also got the sense of sometimes when people said something, I felt for them like, oh, your back's hurting, and but try not to get into it too much. In myself, I was surprised that there wasn't as many things as I thought there was going to be. I suffer with quite a lot of pain in my body, and I don't know whether it's just because it's a good day or maybe I was thinking too much and then I couldn't feel. Yeah, really interesting practice. Yeah,
that's very interesting, isn't it? How we bring expectations. I suffer from pain, so therefore I'm going to have lots of unpleasant pain. And then when you really go there, it's different. Yeah. So what can you learn from that, do you think?
Well, just not to expect it, because I know I do. Like, I suffer with a lot of pain in my hips, and I noticed it last night actually, because when I go to bed, it's when I normally have hip pain. And I actually said to my partner last night, I went, my hip pain is starting as I'm getting into bed, because I am thinking I'm going to have hip pain tonight.
Wow, that's such a good thing to see. Yeah,
I know. And when I do sort of, and it's really hard because I try and sort of go, don't think about it, and that just makes it worse.
yes.
But obviously, if I am in a sort of a good mind where I am letting it go, then often that night I don't have hip pain, so I know it works.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. So Leslie.
Yeah, I was amazed how much was going on. I think generally, unless my body is bothering me, which it does a lot of the time, I tend to, well, I know I'm quite out of touch with my body. So if it's not sort of presenting with pain, I tend to sort of just stay up in my head where I'm more comfortable. So it was a really valuable, and I do try and consciously sort of focus on the pleasant sensations in my body as it's like an antidote to the unpleasant sensations. But no, it was just really useful. Thank you.
And what if you say you're often not very in touch with your body? What do you think would be the advantages of being in touch with your body, given that, you know, there's a bit of a mixture in there?
Well, on a practical level, I might walk into things less, and I might put things down, you know, which would be really helpful. I think the sort of tuning into the pleasant, I think it would just give a sense of balance, that my body isn't just a source of sort of discomfort, and something to be sort of like put up with. Yeah, because there is I mean, just things like the sun shining on your face is quite subtle, but actually when I let myself sort of tune into that is really, really positive and helpful. And it's part of my experience, you know, it is all there.
Yeah. And when you tuned into the sun on your skin, what was your emotional response?
I just found myself smiling.
Yeah. See, it's that simple to shift our emotional states. Yeah. Just pay attention to what is actually happening. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Okay. So just one more. Sian, I think you were next.
There. What I noticed was that as I did the unpleasant and then the pleasant, I've actually found it then quite hard to find neutral things. But I'd developed a sensitivity to what was actually going on in my body.
Yeah. So when you turned to it, it already had a slight flavour of pleasant or unpleasant.
Yeah, and I became more sensitive to that flavour.
And what was the effect of that?
I think, well, generally awareness, self-awareness of where, you know, some parts might need a little attention. And like the other lady with the hip pain was saying, you know, actually in general, things are all right. So getting a much more nuanced and accurate idea of the state of my body.
Yeah, good. Nuanced and accurate. Exactly, because very often we go around with a sort of mental fabrication about our physical experience.
Yes.
Which isn't accurate
or just not aware of it at all. Head on a stick. Yeah,
head on a stick, yeah. And that's very interesting. So if we're head on a stick, we might think a lot of it is neutral. And, you know, traditionally neutral vedana, or lack of awareness of neutral vedana, leads to ignorance. So we are ignoring this physical body. But if we come into it and we sort of wake up, I mean, I had the same experience actually, that when I come closer to neutral vedana, it's usually got some flavour of pleasant or unpleasant. And then if we're aware of that, we can be creative around releasing the habit of either craving or trying to avoid that experience. But if we're just ignoring it, then we've just got this blank mind and we're not cultivating sensitivity to life. Okay, good. I'm sorry, I'd like to hear more people, but I'm aware of time, so we'll just move on if that's okay. So I'm just going to say a little bit now about how we work with unpleasant vedana, because I think it's the unpleasant, the dukkha, that drives a lot of our behavior. although in Four Noble Truths, you know, we're told that it's craving, which is the primary issue. That's craving for this illusory sense of self. So that's a sort of deep metaphysical craving, if you like. But I think behaviorally, a lot of our actual behavior is about trying to avoid pain. We just don't like it, do we? So we get into a struggle with dukkha, however it's turning up, and it might be physical pain, it might be pandemic resistance, it might be emotional avoidance, you know, it can be all kinds of things. But I think for a lot of us, trying to deal with dukkha is a real primary driver in our lives, and most of the time we don't deal with it, do we? We just get stuck in our reactions. It's very interesting, and there's a text called the Salatha Sutta in the Pali Canon, the Sutta of the Arrows or the Dart. Very, very wonderful sutta. And the Buddha says that when we have pain, it's as if we're pierced by an arrow. And then the uninstructed worldling, which is us. I love these translations, the uninstructed worldling. And another translation is the ordinary run-of-the-mill person. It's great, isn't it? So the ordinary run-of-the-mill person, which is us, knows of no other response than to resist and resent that pain. And it's as if they're pierced by a second arrow. So now they have the pain of two arrows. Yeah, so you have pain, and then it's like, resistance, resentment, I don't want it, I hate it. And that becomes another arrow. And then we've got the pain of two arrows. And the second pain, the second arrow, you could say is self-inflicted. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I mean that in a literal sense, in a way, that this habit of resistance, it just leads to more pain. That's the kind of foolish beings that we are. It's a bit like we have pain and we think, oh, I know, let's make my pain worse. Well, why would we do that? There is another way, and this is what the Buddha teaches. But he also says in the sutta, so you have the pain, you know, of no other response than to resist and resent, and then it's like you have another arrow. And then he also says that the ordinary run-of-the-mill person then seeks out sensuous pleasure to distract from the pain. So I think this is very interesting sutta, that very often it's the dukkha that's the basic driver, and then all the kind of distraction and sensuous pleasure and addiction and all these things, they are in one way of trying to deal with pain. So that's why I think actually learning how to work with the unpleasant skillfully also helps us work with craving for pleasure. So I'm going to just demonstrate two different responses that I think we often do. Let me see if I can get so you can see. So here I am going about my life. I've got pain. Straight away, I push it away. Yeah. And then I think what many of us do, we then try to have our life over here. Just try and get in the right. So we've got the pain, we're trying to pretend it's not there, and we're over here trying to have a good life, holding our breath, straining. No, I haven't got pain. I'm going to have a good life. I'm going to make everything okay. So this is the way many of us live. And it's strained. There's a lot of tension when I do this. I'm definitely not resting in gravity. There's a kind of, and then I'm holding my breath. Okay. So then in the Tonglen teachings and in satipatthana, we are encouraged to come into contact with the unpleasant. And we often use the language of turning towards. This is the language a lot of teachers use, to turn towards the pain. But I think this can be misunderstood, because what people think they need to do is this. Yeah, they think they need to kind of stare out the pain. So I'm going to turn towards the pain and I'm going to stare it out. And then what can happen is the octopus can happen, where you get an octopus on your face and all you've got is the pain. Oh, the pain, it's terrible. Oh, the pain, I'm turning towards my pain, but I haven't got any kind of a life because I've just got pain. Yeah, so the octopus on the face, that's what can happen. So we can either be in this kind of, oh no, I don't want it, go away, or, oh God, it's terrible. Oh. Yeah, I think that's what many of us do. So it's denial and overwhelm. Those are the poles that a lot of us flip between. And sometimes we call us blocking and drowning. But it's basically denial and overwhelm. And I think most of us probably flip from one to the other fairly regularly. You know, we'll push it away and then we'll get absolutely knackered. And then it's like, oh God, it's all too much. And we'll fall into overwhelm, and then we'll gradually suck off the octopus. And then we'll just go straight back into denial. So what's another way? So here's the pain, here's my life. Turning towards, I am increasingly thinking just means this. So rather than it being like that, I'm turning towards by letting it into my field of awareness. But I'm keeping breadth. So I've got the pain, the dukkha, whatever it might be, you know, pandemic, physical pain, relationship pain, financial pain, existential pain, whatever it might be. We're not doing that. Turning towards means doing this. And then here it is, but I've also got a breadth of perspective. I've got all the other things in my life. So it's quite subtle, and I really wanted to draw this out, that I think I've seen this again and again, that people think turning towards is a kind of staring out. And I don't believe that is very effective as an approach. So maybe I'll say more about that in the next session. No, let's just have a little go at it. Let's just have a tiny little short practice now, just to have a bit of a go at what's it like to just have the pain here. Hello, pain, dukkha, unpleasant. And if we find that we're doing this, we broaden. And if we find we're doing that, we come closer. And for many of us, it's quite a dynamic practice. You know, we catch ourselves turning away and we let it in. And we catch ourselves, you know, overwhelmed, and we broaden. Okay, so let's just have a little bit of a go. So if you sit down in your meditation practice, you can do it lying, whatever. It's really nice seeing Caroline's child joining us. Hello. You can join in if you want to. Good. You're lucky learning this when you're so young. If anyone else has got any children that want to join in, they're very, very welcome. Okay, so let's just drop our awareness into the body. The body resting on the chair or the floor. Breathing, releasing with the out breath, so we're arriving more fully. And allowing any unpleasant vedana into our field of awareness. Something that you would describe as unpleasant. Maybe pain somewhere in the body, or contraction somewhere in the body. Some expression of an emotionally tight state. And just notice, is there resistance around it? Is there a part of you that's going, oh no, I don't want it? Be very understandable. And is that expressed as a kind of pushing away and a hardening against it? If it is, then let's breathe into that resistance. Breathing in the resistance and breathing out softening and release. Be careful not to force or strain. Or are you feeling overwhelmed by these sensations, this experience, this unpleasant vedana? It's all there is. It's completely dominating your experience. What would it be like to broaden your awareness a little bit? So you're not shutting it out, you're not pushing it away, but you're opening your awareness to include the weight of the body on the chair, the floor, breathing, and the whole body. So a few moments experimenting, playing, having a playful attitude, finding the sweet spot of awareness, openness, where we're neither turning away nor falling into this experience. Got balance, honesty, presence, courage, and perspective. Having gravity as your friend and breathing as your friend. Seeing if we can stay curious, interested, inhabiting our experience with awareness. Okay, let's bring that to a close, moving the body, stretching if we want to. And just noticing, as I say, bring it to a close, do you automatically tighten around it again and think, oh good, I don't have to deal with that anymore, I'll just block it out? If you notice that, just being curious. So this really is why it is warrior training, compassionate warrior training, because we are learning how to be with everything, including the unpleasant. Okay, so just before we finish for the break, I'm just going to conclude this section for the sake of completion, because I want to respect the sutta. It's very interesting that in the sutta, it also makes the distinction between what are called worldly and unworldly feelings. So, and how does she, in regard to feelings, abide contemplating feelings? When feeling a worldly pleasant feeling, she knows, I feel a worldly pleasant feeling. When feeling an unworldly pleasant feeling, she knows, I feel an unworldly pleasant feeling, and so on. Same with worldly and unworldly unpleasant, and worldly and unworldly neutral. So what does this mean? So we're learning here, this is very, very important distinction. We're learning to discern those feelings in the body, the hedonic tone in the body, the feeling tone, which has a latent tendency to stimulate the poisons. So the classic example is you're walking past a cake shop, your eye, your sensing organ sees a cake, you like cake, and before you know it, you are eating the cake. and you have no idea about how you even got into the shop, bought the cake. It's just, yeah. So that would be a good thing to become more aware of. And we let go of falling into the craving. And then the unworldly vedana doesn't have the latent tendency to stimulate the poisons. And we learn how to dwell there. So the pleasant unworldly is the experiences of in deep meditation. So we have pleasure in the dhyanas, for example. You know, when you're meditating and you start to feel this kind of lovely opening around the heart. So the Buddha's saying, well, dwell there. Don't crave, because that really doesn't work, as I'm sure we're all aware. As soon as you start craving dhyanic experience, it just evaporates. But you learn how to just dwell there. This is going to lead towards release. Unpleasant, interestingly, unworldly is dissatisfaction with one's spiritual progress, recognizing there's always further to go. That kind of grit of, oh, you know, I'm just on it's something I don't quite understand. It's just there, but you know, it's a bit unpleasant, but it's got that sense of, oh yes, that I can go deeper. And then neutral unworldly is deep equanimity in meditation. So this is all a bit technical, but the main principle is to learn to recognize this distinction and place awareness on vedana that has the felt quality of release rather than contraction. That's the main thing to take away is, and actually what you may have noticed, I noticed this in that little exercise we just did with the unpleasant, is resisting it, denying it. That's a tight state. Being overwhelmed is a tight state. But when I sort of was resting in that sweet spot, it actually became something that was more expansive, and that will be a place to dwell. I could feel that was the state that would lead to more expansive heart and more expansive mind. So the principle is moving from release to contraction at all times, in all ways. So we're back to the open hand metaphor, living life with an open hand and an open heart. That's really the takeaway from this, if you boil it down to simplicity. So let's take that into a break. Take your body into the break, take your vedana into the break, just be much more sensitive to the arising and the passing of feeling tone in the body. And if you feel overwhelmed, broaden. If you feel blocked, come closer. And if you've got little glimmerings of release, what's it like to rest there? If you feel the sun on your face, just enjoy that without craving. Just, what's it like just to rest there? So it will be a really exciting 15 minutes for you. Such an adventure. Never has a tea break been so adventurous, hopefully. And we'll come back at 1:45, for the next. Good, here we all are. Welcome back. Okay, so just checking in on your body as you come to your position. See if you're still yielding to gravity, breathing. The thing I really love about these Zoom retreats, seeing people just munching away, having their snacks, so good. And very often there are lots of pets. And there are many pet treat. Just having a bit of a look now. Any cats and dogs wandering about? Can't see any. So cats and dogs are very welcome. Children are welcome. Cats and dogs. Oh, look, there we are. Sean's got a cat. Cats and dogs are welcome. All beings are welcome, seen and unseen. Okay, so let's move on now to the load of all this. So again, I've got some slides. Before I go on to those, I just want to say a little bit about Lojong in Sri Ratna, because obviously you've all asked for ordination in the Sri Ratna tradition. And where does this sit with everything? Bhante has encouraged us to study this. He led some study with a group towards the end of his time at Majjhima, but he's never led a seminar on it, and he's never given a series of talks on it, as far as I'm aware. So it's something that has been drawn out more by other order members over the years. It's been studied at the Preceptors College. Subhuti's done talks on it at the LBC. Dharma Din has done a really excellent series of talks on it at the LBC. And I've put the links, the Free Buddhist audio links, on the Padlet for her talks. It was studied at the International Council a few years ago, the 8 verses for training the mind. Yasha Bodhi does a lot of retreats on this topic. So it's quite prevalent. I mean, it's definitely part of our tradition, but we don't have, unfortunately, we don't have sort of source material from Bhante. But that's not because he didn't value it. It's probably just accident of history that never happened. But he has encouraged us to study it. So I just wanted to make that clear. You can also see, hopefully you are getting the sense that satipatthana and Lojong, really, they are mindfulness and metta, you know, taken to their highest degree. And Bhante's given us the foundation of mindfulness and metta as absolutely essential, the ground that we rest on as Buddhist practitioners, mindfulness and metta. And that isn't the case in all Buddhist traditions, this equal emphasis on mindfulness and metta. So it all fits very smoothly with our system of practice. I've also put some notes on Padlet of my own kind of reflections on Bodhichitta. I've done a couple of really long solitaries where I've read all the commentaries and sat with it and sat with the mystery of it and the puzzle of it. You know, what on earth does it mean? May I take on all sufferings and give all my merit away. Kind of, it's so outrageous, some of these sayings. Like, what on earth do they mean? So I've posted a document with some of my own reflections, which are very much work in progress. If people can't get to Padlet, maybe I'll ask the Taraloka team to email it out as well, because it might be just, it's only a page, and it might be maybe a page and a half, might be helpful. Yeah, so I just wanted to contextualize it in our Sri Ratna system. And now let's have a look at it in a bit more detail. So picking up where we left off earlier on, it's the whole Lojong system is moving away from me, this kind of contraction of sort of pulling our awareness inwards, either through craving or self-hatred, whatever it might be, this kind of default setting of hanging on to this illusory separate self. And we're moving towards, oh, let's just give it all away, give it all away, give it all away. And the doorway of Tonglen, as I'm sure, of Lojong, as I'm sure I've made it really clear, is we do this through other, through turning our attention to other. So I really love this image I used yesterday, that satipatthana is, it's a bit like we're holding a mirror up and we're seeing very clearly who we are and how we function, and getting to know our experience very deeply, and again loosening up the selfing. And then in Lojong, that mirror becomes a window, and it's like we look out and, oh my God, there's all these other people that are just like me, in the same predicament, with the same tendencies. And how can I free myself in order to free them? And this deep compassion that arises when we see the human condition, the predicament that we're all in. So I thought today I'd just introduce some of the slogans a bit more. So it's 7 point, I'm using 7-point mind training model here, that, as I said yesterday, there's also the 8 verses for training the mind. But I personally really love the 7 points with all their slogans, because I love slogans. They're very helpful, just things that you can use to remember the Dharma. You know, like I said yesterday, my current slogan is take life seriously, hold it lightly. That's brilliant. You know, I could reflect on that till the end of my life, and it will never cease giving me fruit. So the first point of the 7 points is practicing the preliminaries. And again, these are widely practiced in Sri Ratna as part of our tradition. I think there might be a retreat at Tiratnaloka on the preliminaries, is there? I think there might be. Anyway, I'm afraid I don't know. But it's the 4 reminders. This human birth is precious, an opportunity to awaken. This body is impermanent, death is certain. The karma I create shapes the course of my life, and life has inevitable difficulties no one can control at all. Yeah, so they're excellent trainings. So the preliminaries this is the orientation. We reflect on these to orient ourselves towards the Dharma. And we've got lots of preliminaries in Sri Ratna. We've got spiritual friendship, right livelihood, Sangha, Noble Eightfold Path. You know, they're all preliminaries. They're all ways of tenderizing our awareness and turning our mind towards the Dharma. Sevenfold Puja, all these things. And then point 2 is the main practice, which is training in Bodhichitta. And as I said the other day, the Bodhichitta, the Tonglen, the turning towards the suffering of others, it all rests on the view of absolute Bodhichitta, which is wisdom. So you remember the other day I had the image of the blue sky, which is one of the images of absolute Bodhichitta. So the slogan is regard all phenomena as dreams. And that means that although experiences may seem solid, they are passing memories. And this is seeing the emptiness of things, that things in the world do not have any inherent self-existence. They don't have any autonomous existence. Everything is coming in to being and passing away in dependence on causes and conditions. So regard all phenomena as dreams. And then we examine the nature of unborn awareness. And this is the emptiness of the individual separate mind. That when we look inside, do I find me? Do I find this little mind that's got a self, an independent existence? No, I don't. So you examine that. And then you let go of even emptiness as a concept and a refuge, so that you can see these are going deeper. Even thinking, oh, you know, I understand emptiness. No, you have to let go of even that. Sometimes called even the remedy is freed to release. Even the remedy, which is an understanding of emptiness. No, you have to let that go as well. And then we rest in the nature of all, the basis of everything. So we rest in the vast and luminous awareness at the depths of the mind, free of contraction. And again, in the Sri Ratna model, this will be the Dharma Niyama processes. These processes that are endlessly creative, vast, boundless, limitless. So those are the meditation reflections. And then remember all this between meditations, be a child of illusion. It's beautiful. So as I'm sure you've already seen, Lojong practices all the time. It's not just in meditation. We're turning towards experience all the time, and unwinding our misapprehension of the nature of things all the time, and allowing things to release and to flow. I mean, that's another way of understanding it, sort of experientially, I think. Allowing life to release and to flow, rather than it being these kind of static blocks that we keep on banging into. Allowing life to release and to flow. So that's the absolute bodhicitta view that it all rests upon. And then a relative bodhicitta, which is the skillful means, the compassion, you know, how do we live in this world? So we have the perspective, but then, you know, I am here as an individual who's living in this world with 7 billion other individuals. You know, I do have an existence. It's just not a fixed and unchanging existence. So how do we transform within that? How do we use skillful means to move towards freedom? And this is compassion. So slogan 7, train and taking and sending alternately, put them on the breath. So this is practicing Tonglen. Cultivate empathy and experience all living beings as kin. So we're taking in, yes, you exist. I see you. And then, I love you. I see you. I love you. I empathize. I love. Yeah. So as we did that practice yesterday afternoon, we can bring this into the Metabhavana practice. Slogan 8, 3 objects, 3 poisons, 3 roots of virtue, which is very relevant to what we're doing today. So the 3 objects is pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So it's pleasant vedana or objects. And then the 3 poisons is greed, aversion, and indifference. And the 3 roots of virtue are the antidotes. So to the pleasant, if we're not aware, we go into greed. And then the antidote is contentment. If it's unpleasant, we're not aware, it goes into aversion. And the antidote is love. And neutral things we just don't care about. We're bored, we're indifferent. And the antidote is wisdom, seeing into the nature of things. Everything is interconnected and permanent, fluid, open, and we can love on the basis of that. So we're going to do a practice in a moment based on this slogan: pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and then flipping that to contentment, love, wisdom. And then, sorry, I was doing this, got some little typos in here. It said, begin the exchange with yourself. This is very important. And again, it's very like the Metabhavana. We start the Metabhavana with ourselves. And as we did in that practice just before the break with the unpleasant, we breathed in, didn't we? If we had resistance, breathe it in, soften, and then breathe out, release. Breathe in, soften, breathe out, release. So it's a fantastic practice to have in your toolkit. Sometimes it's called Tonglen on the spot. So whatever you're experiencing, turn towards it, breathe it in, and then breathe out, release. Dhammadinna, again, she says that Tonglen is a combination of compassion and metta. So we breathe in compassion towards others' suffering or our own suffering, and we breathe out metta, love. So again, it's really lovely the way you can see all these different teachings all coming together. We've got Metabhavana, we've got Brahma Viharas coming out in this mind training. And then I've had a go at rendering the relative bodhicitta slogans. This is a really interesting practice because there's lots of different translations, but to try and have a go, what does it mean to me? How would I explain these? So I'm just sharing this. I'm not suggesting that it's got any particular wisdom, but it might resonate. Cultivate empathy and experience all living beings as kin. Deep down, we are so alike. Nobody wants to suffer, and we all seek happiness. That's a perspective. Exchange self and other. And this means exchanging self-importance for loving others. Mount this on the breath. Do this with joy. Practice caring more about others than yourself as an antidote to habitual self-importance. Whatever you experience, think of others. Use every experience as a gateway to empathy and always wish others well. That's a very powerful practice. So say you're feeling really contracted and tight and upset. You can go inwards, or you can think there's going to be probably millions of people in the world right now feeling contracted and tight and upset. Let me think of them. Breathing in the state in oneself and everybody else, and then let's just let it go. Releasing, wishing all those other beings having the same experience, freedom. So you're using your own experience as this touchstone of empathy. So that's a lovely little slogan that I sometimes use. Whatever I experience, think of others. So always kind of universalize your experience. And then practice Tonglen on the spot at all times. Just breathing whatever's happening and breathing out release. and come up with slogans to help you change your default setting from identifying with an illusory self to living with compassion for all. I mean, that might be a nice little bit of homework for you over the next 24 hours. Come up with a little pithy saying that you might like to memorize for yourself that will help you change your default setting from identifying with an illusory self to living with compassion for all. I think this one that I've got, take life seriously, hold life lightly. It does do that actually, because take life seriously is the relative. It's like really engaging with beings in their suffering, and hold it lightly is more the perspective of the absolute, of it's all just a blue sky and it's a flow and it's changing and nothing's fixed and solid. But fine, yeah, that'll be really great homework. If you want to, just see if you can come up with a slogan. And it's interesting, in the 7-point mind training, there are roughly 59 slogans, and they're all designed to be pithy little ways to take your everyday experience towards freedom. And it's always about flipping, you know, me, to, think of others, or, don't want suffering. No, breathe it in, breathe in the suffering. So we're flipping the script all the time in the mind training. Okay, so I'll put these slides on the Padlet later. And look at this, the Taraloka team is saying, break the spell, retreat on the 4 mind turnings at Taraloka this year. Great. So if you're really interested in those preliminaries, then you can do a whole retreat on that at Taraloka. Is it part of the Sri Ratna program as well, the training for ordination program? Does anyone know? I know they did the team there did do some talks on them years ago. Anyway, yeah, it doesn't matter.
I think it was when they gave those talks, but I'm not sure it still is.
Okay, good, thank you. But anyway, the really excellent news is you can go to Taraloka virtually or online and immerse yourself in those trainings, because they are so excellent, those preliminaries. Yeah. All right, then let's do a practice now together to explore this. Tonglen, breathing in awareness, love, breathing in the resistance, breathing in the stuckness, breathing in the suffering, and breathing out love. So choosing our position. Actually, I'll tell you what, before we do that, let's all just have a moment to stretch. So asking yourself, what does my body need? And if you can give it, then doing so. I'm just going to stand up for a moment. Okay. Actually, I'm just going to change my chair as well. So sorry about that. To begin with, let's settle into the position that we've chosen. Being aware of the whole body.
Is talking. Vidyamala, I think you're muted.
So I am. Thank you for letting me know that little technical error. So I was just suggesting that we use this time to arrive, to settle. Let the 4 diaphragms participate in our experience of breathing. Yielding the body up to gravity, not collapsing, but yielding, so there's a sense of release and yet a sense of vitality, aliveness. And opening our awareness to include everything. Let's spend a few moments attending to any unpleasant vedana that we're experiencing in the body. Finding that sweet spot between denial and overwhelm. Breathing in that experience and breathing out love, kindness, metta towards ourselves, softening the resistance, the hard edges with the out breath. So we're not turning away from this experience, we're not falling into this experience. We're opening to this experience with receptive, kindly, open awareness, breathing in awareness in its fullness, breathing out metta, softness, yielding, release, kindliness in its fullness. And what about pleasant vedana that's showing up? Seeing if we can open to it without grasping. Again, we breathe it in and then we breathe out contentment. Just letting it be as it is, resting with a light, delicate, open awareness. Allowing breathing to soften the tight fist of grasping, of wanting, of clinging. And neutral. Any areas that feel dull or boring, you're not interested in your body. What happens when you allow your awareness to rest there, to wake them up into awareness, letting go of ignorance and allowing wisdom to arise. So we breathe in the dullness, the ignoring, and we breathe out, opening, vitality, aliveness, waking up to experience in its richness. Broadening awareness to be aware of the whole body, all the vedana arising and passing, arising and passing, flowing through the moments. Breathing in all that experience, breathing out, metta, openness, release, flow. So we rest in a broad receptive awareness, allowing everything to flow through the moments. Now opening our awareness and allowing a friend to come into our field of awareness. So we're staying grounded and present, but we're including a friend in our awareness, just choosing someone quickly. resting in their presence, giving them the gift of your attention. Letting go of views, judgments, opinions. Just letting them be how they are right now in our imagination. A friend has a body, a friend is breathing. They have unpleasant vedana they'll tend to push away, contract against, with all the struggles that follow. They'll have pleasant vedana they'll tend to chase after, grasp onto with all the struggles that follow. And they'll have great zones of dullness, lack of awareness with all the struggles that follow. Let's breathe all that in, awareness of our friends' struggles because of how they relate to their vedana. And then breathing out metta, kindliness, well-wishing. May they be free. Being careful not to force or strain around the breathing, letting the breathing be natural. But allowing our practice to ride the breath, exchanging self-importance for being other-regarding. Breathing in awareness of all the dukkha that arises through fighting with vedana. And breathing out, wishing then to be free of that, to live in open, vast, luminous awareness. And using the same principles as the previous practice. If at any point you get overwhelmed or feels a bit much, then broaden awareness. Feel the whole body, feeling breathing in the back of the body perhaps. Feeling the hands and the feet stabilize. And if you're still feeling a bit numb, cut off, blocked, turning away, then come closer to connection with your friend. Really imagining what it might be like to be them, with all that arises from their vedana. Now let's expand our awareness still more to include everybody here on this retreat. So we're staying centered and grounded, embodied, present. to our own experience, but we're opening our field of awareness to include all of us. 110 of us at the moment. Again, you might like to imagine all these little faces climbing out of the screen, and we're all occupying a space together, maybe a big field, a garden, a big hall, socially distanced. Here we are, breathing in and out. Just as we fight with our vedana, being aware that all the others also will have habits of contracting around vedana in one way or another, pushing away the unpleasant, clinging onto the pleasant, zoning out around the neutral, with all the struggles that follow. So breathing in that awareness of all the struggles, turning towards it, and breathing out metta, well-wishing, kindliness. May all of us be free of these contracted states, and may all of us taste boundless, luminous awareness, where everything is fluid and open, free of restriction. Because you know what it's like to struggle with your vedana. You know what it's like for everyone else to struggle with their vedana, using your own experience as this point of empathy. Breathing it in and then releasing, freeing with the out-breath for all beings. Now bringing the weight of the body to the foreground of awareness, breathing in the body to the foreground of awareness. We're remaining open to one another, but stabilizing ourselves. Strong sense of the body being present, grounded, breathing. Vedana flowing through the moment. And now for the last couple of minutes, let's let go of making any effort whatsoever and just sit. It's all being the effects of the practice. So beginning to move the body if you'd like to. Seeing if you can keep this sense of a flow of vedana going with you. If you notice any contracted states, breathe them in and then breathing out, release. So it's 12:30. And what I suggest you do is if you've got any reflections or anything you'd like to share, take it to your groups this afternoon. And then 3:30, we'll come back and I'll do a similar meditation. Then we'll do a longer meditation then. And maybe I'll try and make some time for some inquiry at the end of that as well. So you've got another adventure ahead of you, which is lunch and other people and just really bringing all this awareness practice, noticing what's happening with your breathing.